The Colorado River flows for over 1,400 miles through the American West. It carves a vital path through 7 states and parts of Mexico. Nearly 40 million people in the region depend on its waters to survive. This is the river that tamed a desert and built the mighty Hoover Dam. Its patient current sculpted the world-famous Grand Canyon over millennia. Millions of tourists visit this natural wonder every single year. Its diversions created the incredibly fertile Imperial Valley in California. The river's hydroelectric power helps light up the iconic city of Las Vegas. But this great symbol of American achievement is now facing a modern crisis. Its 2 largest reservoirs are shrinking faster than anyone had predicted. The white bathtub rings on Lake Mead's canyon walls mark years of decline. Ancient promises of endless water have now turned into bitter modern fights. States, cities, and farms all argue over who should cut back first. What happens to a civilization in the desert when its main river runs low? Can a system built on the dream of growth survive an age of painful limits? In this video, we will explore the Colorado River through its landmarks, history, successes, and struggles. But before we start, here's a little question to entertain you. Where does the Colorado River begin its journey? A. The Appalachian Mountains. B. The Rocky Mountains. C. The Sierra Nevada. D. The Cascade Range. Share your opinion in the comments and patiently watch this video till the end to find out the truth. Chapter 1: Empire of Dust. The grand vision of the American Southwest is facing a harsh reality. The entire system was built on the promise of controlling the Colorado River. At the heart of this promise are 2 massive reservoirs. Lake Mead and Lake Powell are the nation's largest water savings accounts. They were designed to hold 4 years of the river's entire flow. This was meant to protect the region from even the most severe droughts. But today, these Great Lakes are shadows of their former selves. Their water levels have fallen to the lowest points since they were first filled. Together, these 2 reservoirs can store over 50 million acre-feet of water. That is an almost unimaginable volume of liquid security, yet both lakes are now holding less than 1/3 of their total capacity. In the early 2020s, they approached a dangerous quarter-full level. The pale, chalky bathtub rings on the canyon walls tell the story. Each ring marks a level where the water once stood for years. The surface of Lake Mead has dropped over 170 feet. That is taller than a 15-story building of missing water. This decline has exposed things hidden for nearly a century. The drop reveals a stark and sometimes eerie new landscape. Lost towns, sunken boats, and ancient canyons are reappearing from the depths. This is more than just a problem of water supply for cities. It is also a looming crisis for the entire Western power grid. Both Hoover Dam and Glen Canyon Dam generate massive amounts of electricity. This hydropower has fueled the growth of the Southwest for decades. This cheap, clean energy attracted industries and kept costs low for residents. But the generators depend on the immense pressure of deep water. As the lake levels fall, the pressure decreases, and so does power output. The dams have already lost a significant portion of their generating ability. Officials have warned about reaching a critical point called the power pool. Below this level, the turbines can no longer spin efficiently. The dams would effectively stop producing reliable electricity. Millions of people could face higher energy bills and an unstable grid. An even more frightening threshold exists below the power pool. This point of no return is known as dead pool. At dead pool, the water level is so low it cannot flow past the dam at all. The river's flow through the Grand Canyon would be reduced to a trickle. For Lake Mead, this would mean a catastrophe for everyone downstream. The states of Arizona and California would be cut off from their supply. Mexico would also lose the water it is guaranteed by treaty. It would trigger an economic and humanitarian crisis on an incredible scale. For Lake Powell, reaching dead pool would be just as dire. It would dissolve the legal frameworks that have managed the river for a century. The city of Las Vegas understands this threat better than anyone. It relies on Lake Mead for 90% of its water supply. The city's original water intakes are now dangerously exposed. They sit high and dry, far above the current water line. In a desperate race against time, the region invested billions. They built a new, deeper intake tunnel at the bottom of the lake. This project is often called the third straw. The final cost for this insurance policy was nearly $1 billion. It allows Las Vegas to pull water even as the lake shrinks further. But this is a temporary fix, not a permanent solution. It is an engineering marvel born out of sheer necessity. It shows how close the system is to absolute failure. The problem at one reservoir immediately affects all the others. The Colorado River is managed as one interconnected system. Water is strategically released from Lake Powell to flow down to Lake Mead. These releases are required by the laws that govern the river. But with Lake Powell also at historic lows, these releases are difficult. Dam operators face an impossible choice. Do they hold water back to protect Lake Powell's turbines? Or do they release it to prop up Lake Mead and supply the lower states? This dilemma pits the upper basin states against the lower basin states. Every decision involves painful trade-offs and political battles. The system no longer has the buffer it was designed for. A single dry year can now push it to the edge of breakdown. For many years, this crisis was described simply as a drought. Scientists now understand the situation is far more permanent. The region is experiencing its driest period in over 1,000 years. This long-term aridification is supercharged by a warming climate. Higher temperatures mean less snowpack in the Rocky Mountains. The snow that does fall melts earlier and faster in the season. More moisture evaporates from the soil before it ever reaches the river. The result is a structural deficit in the water budget. On average, millions more acre-feet of water are now used than what flows into the system each year. The region has built a lifestyle that the river can no longer afford. This means the reservoirs are guaranteed to fall over the long term. A few good winters can slow the decline, but they cannot reverse it. These dams were once monuments to American ambition and engineering. They were built to last for centuries, symbols of humanity's triumph. They allowed cities of millions to bloom in the heart of the desert. For generations, the water and power they provided felt infinite. That illusion has now been completely shattered. The future they were supposed to guarantee now seems uncertain. We are now forced to watch these concrete giants being slowly humbled. The vast reservoirs they created are turning back into canyons. The promise of endless growth has hit a wall of physical limits. The situation forces us to confront a difficult truth. We are witnessing the slow-motion failure of a foundational system. What do you think is the most shocking part of this crisis? Is it the sheer volume of missing water, or the fact that these massive dams could actually fail to provide power and water? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Before we continue, make sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel. And now, let's dive in. Chapter 2: Paper Water. So how did this system, designed for security, become so fragile? The answer is not found in the climate of today. We must look back a full century to the moment of its creation. The crisis was not an accident of nature. It was a flaw written into the river's founding document. The problems we now face were set in motion by the ambitions of the past. In the early 20th century, the American Southwest was booming. Engineers and politicians saw the desert not as a limit, but as a challenge. They dreamed of building an American empire in the arid sands. This grand vision required total control over the region's lifeblood. But the 7 states of the basin were locked in a bitter fight. California was growing fast and using its wealth to claim a large share. The less populated states like Arizona feared their neighbor would take everything. This conflict stalled all major development for years. The federal government knew that without a deal, Hoover Dam could never be built. A truce was needed to unlock the river's full potential. So in 1922, representatives from the 7 states met in Santa Fe, New Mexico. Herbert Hoover, then the Secretary of Commerce, was the deal's key broker. After tense negotiations, they signed the historic Colorado River Compact. This legal document was a landmark achievement in American politics. It divided the river basin into 2 halves with 2 groups of states. The upper basin included Colorado, Utah, Wyoming, and New Mexico. The lower basin was made up of California, Arizona, and Nevada. Each basin was allocated 7.5 million acre-feet of water per year. The compact also required the upper basin to deliver a specific amount of water downstream. This agreement paved the way for the dams and aqueducts that built the modern West. But the compact was built upon a single catastrophic mistake. The men who wrote it believed the river carried over 15 million acre-feet of water annually. Their measurements were based on data from an unusually wet period. The river's long-term average flow is actually much lower. It is closer to 13 million acre-feet per year, and sometimes even less. This means they promised more water than nature could reliably provide. They created a system of what is now called paper water. These are legal rights to water that exists on paper, but not always in the river itself. During wetter decades, this structural problem remained hidden. The reservoirs would fill, creating a false sense of permanent security. But the math problem never went away. It was simply postponed for a future generation. However, there was a second, equally profound failure in the 1922 agreement. At the negotiating table, a major group of stakeholders was missing. The 29 Native American tribes of the basin were not invited to participate. At the time, federal policy did not respect tribal sovereignty. The tribes were often seen as obstacles to progress, not as partners. Their ancestors had lived along the river for countless generations. For many of these tribes, the river is a sacred living entity. It is the foundation of their creation stories and religious ceremonies. Yet their rights, their culture, and their voices were completely ignored. In Western water law, the most important principle is simple. It is a legal doctrine known as first in time, first in right. This doctrine is the bedrock of water management in the region. It means that an earlier legal right is a better right, with no exceptions. A farm established in 1890 must get its full legal share of water. A growing city founded in 1950 only gets the water that is left over. By this logic, the tribes have the most senior rights of anyone. Their claims are older than any state, city, or farm in the region. These rights are a legal time bomb that has been ticking for 100 years. For decades, most tribes lacked the financial resources to fight for their water. They could not afford the expensive legal battles against powerful states. But that situation has now changed dramatically. Tribal gaming revenues and federal land claim settlements changed everything. This new economic power allowed them to hire the best water lawyers in the country. Today, they are organized, well-funded, and legally sophisticated. They are aggressively pursuing their water rights in the federal court system. The Navajo Nation's case recently went all the way to the Supreme Court. Their claims are not just for basic survival. They are for the water needed to build their own economic futures. They are not asking for a small adjustment. They are demanding their full, legally recognized share of the river. If the tribes are successful, the results will be revolutionary. The current water allocations for every state would have to be recalculated. Cities like Phoenix and agricultural districts in California could see major cuts. A victory for the tribes would upend a century of agreements and assumptions. It would force a complete redivision of a shrinking resource. It would shift power in the West away from state capitals and towards tribal governments. A great legal and moral reckoning is coming for the Colorado River. The mistakes of the past are now shaping the battles of the present. This history forces us to ask a difficult question about fairness. Should a century-old agreement be honored, even if it was based on a major error and excluded the original inhabitants? Or does justice demand that we fundamentally rethink who gets the water today? Share your opinion on this in the comments below. Our team needs your help. Subscribe to our channel to help more people learn the truth about current events. And now, Now we move on. Chapter 3: New Water Barons. The crisis on the Colorado River is not just about history or climate change. It is also a story about money, power, and the industries shaping our modern world. The river's water is the fuel for a massive economy that serves the entire globe. Three major groups are now competing for their share of this shrinking resource. The outcome of their quiet struggle will determine the future of the Southwest. The first and largest consumer of water has always been agriculture. Nearly 70% of the Colorado River's flow is used for farming. This water has turned millions of acres of desert into productive fields. It supports a multi-billion-dollar industry that feeds much of the nation. These agricultural zones, like California's Imperial Valley, are globally significant. The region is often called America's winter salad bowl for its productivity. This production is only possible due to reliable irrigation from the river. It forms the economic backbone for many rural communities in the area. But the type of crops being grown has sparked intense controversy. A significant portion of the water is used to grow alfalfa and other hay. These are very thirsty but relatively low-value crops grown primarily to feed cattle. The situation becomes even more complex with foreign investment. This is often called the export of virtual water. Foreign corporations purchase or lease American land and water rights. For example, a company based in Saudi Arabia owns large tracts of land in Arizona. It pumps huge amounts of groundwater, which is connected to the river system. This water is used to grow alfalfa, which is then shipped back to the Middle East to feed dairy herds. In essence, the region is exporting its precious water in the form of hay. Meanwhile, local residents in Arizona are being asked to conserve every drop. This has created a fierce debate about who the water should really be for. Is it for local food security or for global corporate profits? While farms and cities have fought for a century, a new competitor has arrived. The technology industry has quietly become a massive consumer of water. Giant data centers for companies like Google, Meta, and Microsoft have been built across the desert. They were attracted by cheap land, reliable energy, and abundant solar power. But these facilities require a staggering amount of water for cooling. Their servers run 24 hours a day, generating immense heat. The most efficient way to cool them in a desert climate is through evaporation. This water must often be highly purified before it can be used for these systems. The process of purification itself can also be very water-intensive. A single large data center can use millions of gallons of water every day. That is often as much as a small town of 10 to 15,000 people. The rapid rise of artificial intelligence has made this demand explode. Training AI models requires immense computational power. This means more servers, more heat, and therefore more water. The tech industry argues that these centers are vital for American innovation. They create high-paying jobs and provide the infrastructure for our digital lives. Many centers are built alongside massive solar farms in the desert. This creates a perception of green energy that sometimes overlooks the water cost. The battle between agriculture and cities has now become a three-way conflict: water for food, water for people, or water for the cloud. Each choice has profound consequences for the region's future. This growing scarcity has also attracted a third powerful group, Wall Street. Where there is scarcity, there's an opportunity for profit. Water is now being treated as a tradable commodity, just like oil or gold. In 2020, water futures began trading on the Chicago Mercantile Exchange. This allows investors to bet on the future price of water in California. Hedge funds and private equity firms are buying land with senior water rights. They are not buying it to farm, but as a long-term financial investment. Investors see water rights as a climate-proof asset class. Its value is almost guaranteed to increase as scarcity worsens. These new water barons are creating a market for a resource that was once considered a public trust. They argue that market forces will encourage conservation and efficiency. By putting a high price on water, it will naturally move to where it is most valued. But this raises profound ethical questions about the future. For instance, A farmer could be outbid for water by a distant investment fund. Should a life-giving resource be controlled by those with the most money? Could we see a future where cities have to buy their water from investment firms at high prices? The fight for the Colorado River is no longer just in courtrooms. It is now happening on the trading floors of high finance. The competition between these three powerful interests is a defining struggle of our time. Big agriculture feeds the country and has deep historical roots in the region. Big tech represents the future of innovation and America's economic growth. Big finance operates on the relentless logic of markets and private ownership. The Colorado River simply does not have enough water to satisfy all of their growing demands. Something will have to give. This leads to a fundamental question about society's priorities. When there is not enough water for everyone, who should get it? Should we prioritize growing food, powering the digital future, or letting the market decide? We would like to hear your opinion in the comments below. Now please take a moment to hit that like button. It's a small action, but it helps YouTube's algorithm promote our videos to a wider audience. Chapter 4: The Dying River. In all the debates over acre-feet, hydropower, and legal rights, one voice is silent. It is the voice of the Colorado River itself. For a century, it has been treated as a machine, a plumbing system to be engineered and controlled. The dams that tamed it and the canals that drained it have been celebrated as triumphs. But in the quest to make the desert bloom for humanity, a profound truth has been ignored. The river is not a machine, it is a living ecosystem, and it has been pushed to the brink of collapse. Before the dams, the Colorado was a wild and powerful force of nature. It was not the cold, clear river that tourists raft on today. For millions of years, it was a warm, muddy, and unpredictable giant. In the spring, melting snow from the Rocky Mountains would send a furious flood downstream. This flood carried millions of tons of reddish silt, which gave the river its name, colored red. This sediment load was immense, a constant flow of natural fertilizer. It was this silt that built the vast fertile delta over eons of time. The river was a powerful creator of land, not just a carver of canyons. The fish that evolved here were unlike any others on the planet. Species like the massive Colorado pike minnow were perfectly adapted to this warm, murky world. Then, in the 20th century, the great dams were built. Glen Canyon Dam, which holds back Lake Powell, was the most ecologically devastating. The dam's intake pipes were placed deep in the reservoir. This means the water released downstream is drawn from the cold, dark bottom of the lake. The river's temperature below the dam instantly dropped by 20 degrees. This single change was a death sentence for the native fish. The warm water they needed to survive, spawn, and thrive was gone. The river that flowed into the Grand Canyon was suddenly a completely alien environment. The cold, clear water created a perfect habitat for non-native species. Rainbow trout and other sport fish were introduced. They thrived in the new conditions and outcompeted the native fish for food. But the problem is not just competition, it is active predation. Warmer surface water in the reservoirs now creates ideal habitats for aggressive predators like smallmouth bass. These invasive fish escape through the dams and hunt the young of the endangered native species downstream. Efforts to protect and restore the river's original inhabitants are therefore constantly being undermined by a new wave of invaders. The original inhabitants of the river were now critically endangered. The dams also dealt a second, equally destructive blow. They trapped the river's sediment. The silt and sand that gave the river its color and power now settled at the bottom of Lake Powell. Scientists estimate that every single day the dam traps enough sediment to fill thousands of dump trucks. This nutrient-rich mud, which once nourished the entire ecosystem downstream, was now gone. This has a direct impact inside the Grand Canyon National Park today. The sandy beaches along the riverbanks are shrinking year after year. These beaches are vital for campers and for native vegetation. Without new sediment from upstream, they are simply washing away, lost forever. The dams also eliminated the crucial spring floods. These floods were the river's natural reset button. They scoured the riverbanks, clearing away debris and creating habitats. They deposited layers of fresh silt that allowed native cottonwood trees to grow. Without these floods, the river's edges became choked with invasive plants like tamarisk. These non-native shrubs consume huge amounts of water and provide poor habitat for local wildlife. The river that was once a wide, dynamic corridor became a narrow, constrained channel. It was a river in a straitjacket, unable to move or breathe. The ultimate tragedy of this story is found at the river's end. For 6 million years, the Colorado River met the sea in the Gulf of California. It formed a massive delta in Mexico, a lush green oasis in the Sonoran Desert. This delta was once over 2 million acres, a vibrant network of marshes, lagoons, and forests. This vast wetland was once considered one of the world's great natural wonders. Its richness supported a thriving local fishing economy for the Kukapa people. This region was once so wild that jaguars roamed the delta's forests, and millions of birds on the Pacific Flyway depended on this oasis. But today, the Colorado River no longer reaches the ocean. So much water is diverted for farms and cities that the river now dies in the sand. It disappears miles from its historic destination. The once great delta is now a cracked, salty, and barren wasteland. The forests have died, the marshes have dried up, and the birds have gone. A massive ecosystem, built over millennia, was destroyed in less than a century. It is the ghost of a river, a testament to the profound consequences of human action. There was a brief glimmer of hope in 2014, when a small amount of water was intentionally released to the delta. Life temporarily returned, proving the ecosystem is resilient. But it was not enough to reverse decades of decline. Humanity has gained much from controlling the Colorado River. Cities were built, food was grown, and power was generated. But it is important to acknowledge what has been lost. A wild, living river has been traded for a highly managed but dying one. The system is now engineered for the sole benefit of one species. This ecological story raises a fundamental question of responsibility. In the fight for water, should the river itself have a right to exist? Should humanity allocate water not just for its own cities and farms, but to keep this vital ecosystem alive? Let us know what you think in the comments. Now it's time to find out the correct answer to the quiz. Where does the Colorado River begin its journey? A. The Appalachian Mountains. B. The Rocky Mountains. C. The Sierra Nevada. D. The Cascade Range. The correct answer is B. The Rocky Mountains. Chapter 5. Future Crossroads. The Colorado River now stands at a decisive moment. What once powered cities, farms, and entire economies has been stretched to its breaking point. Every option left on the table carries massive costs, whether financial, ecological, or social. The choice is no longer about whether action is needed, but about which direction to take. Some argue for technological fixes that could supply new water to the desert. Desalination plants are often presented as a miracle solution, yet they consume staggering amounts of electricity. To produce just 1 acre-foot of fresh water requires enough energy to power a home for months. That makes desalination extremely expensive and dependent on secure energy supplies, which the Southwest already struggles to guarantee during heat waves. Other cities are investing heavily in advanced wastewater recycling. This process is often called toilet to tap because it treats sewage until it becomes drinkable again. Modern systems in places like Southern California already recycle millions of gallons each day, showing the method is safe and practical. But scaling such projects requires billions of dollars in infrastructure, and public acceptance remains fragile. Many residents still hesitate to drink water that originated in a sewage pipe, even if scientists prove its purity. A more radical engineering proposal is the construction of massive pipelines to bring water from wetter regions. Maps have been drawn imagining channels from the Mississippi River or even from the Great Lakes, stretching thousands of miles to the southwest. The price tags for such mega projects reach into the hundreds of billions, not including the political battles that would erupt. States along those rivers guard their water fiercely, and convincing them to share with the desert seems highly unlikely. Against these visions of technological rescue stands the quieter idea of managed retreat. Instead of creating more supply, this approach reduces demand. One common policy is cash for grass, where cities pay homeowners to rip out lawns and replace them with desert landscaping. This saves billions of gallons annually and is already reshaping suburban neighborhoods across Nevada and Arizona. A second policy pays farmers to keep fields fallow rather than growing water-intensive crops. This may seem counterintuitive, but reducing production in targeted areas can free up water for millions of urban residents. The boldest version of managed retreat would halt all new construction in desert cities. Las Vegas, Phoenix, and Tucson continue to attract new residents even as their water supplies shrink. By pausing development, states could stop demand from spiraling out of control. Yet such restrictions would ignite fierce political backlash, as growth has been the foundation of these cities' prosperity for decades. Politicians must balance the promise of new jobs and housing against the hard reality of shrinking rivers and emptying reservoirs. History offers sobering lessons. The Aral Sea in Central Asia was once the fourth largest inland body of water in the world. After decades of overuse and reckless irrigation, it shrank into a toxic desert. Fishing towns were abandoned, and the exposed lake bed released poisonous dust storms that poisoned crops and communities. That collapse stands as a warning of what can happen when water demand permanently exceeds supply. Other examples are equally grim. China's Yellow River, sometimes called the cradle of Chinese civilization, has run dry for long stretches in recent decades. Industrial overuse and climate pressures left entire regions without irrigation water, forcing farms to fail and communities to migrate. India's Ganges River, sacred to millions, has faced choking pollution and declining flow, creating health crises and threatening agriculture in one of the most densely populated areas on Earth. These disasters show that when rivers falter, entire cultures suffer. Yet there are also stories of recovery that prove collapse is not inevitable. In Europe, the once dead Thames River in London was revived after decades of coordinated investment in sewage treatment and pollution control. It now supports fish species that had vanished for generations. Closer to the United States, the Los Angeles River was nearly lost to concrete channels, but restoration projects have begun to bring back wetlands, wildlife, and cleaner water. Even parts of the Aral Sea have seen modest rebirth, where Kazakhstan built dams to trap what little water remains, creating a smaller but living ecosystem for local people. These successes show that with willpower and resources, rivers can recover. Each path carries heavy risks. Relying on technology alone demands massive spending and could tie the region to unstable energy supplies. Choosing managed retreat means accepting limits and reshaping the very identity of the American Southwest. Neither choice will satisfy everyone, yet delaying the decision may be the most dangerous path of all. Every year of inaction locks the region deeper into drought, making future solutions even more costly. The Colorado River crisis forces us to imagine what survival will look like in the decades ahead. Will desert cities shine with new technology that defies nature, or will they scale back and learn to live within their means? Perhaps the future will combine both strategies, with some cities embracing innovation and others accepting retreat. The only certainty is that the status quo cannot hold. The river that carved canyons and fed civilizations has reached its limit, and human society must now decide how to respond. Do you believe the Southwest should fight to engineer its way out of the water crisis, or should it accept limits and adapt to the reality of a shrinking river? Share your thoughts in the comments and let us know which future you see ahead. Thank you for exploring the hidden corners of the USA with us. Click on the video you see on the screen to check out other hidden discoveries on our channel.